What's up guys, today we're going to be finally going over the new elemental wells, which is a new mod system that started this season, and there's going to be 6 of them that you can get right now. And in this video we will be breaking down what they all do and making one cool build with them. So how do you get these mods? Well, you go to the war table in the helm, and there's going to be 2 you can buy weekly, and if you've been buying them every single week you have all 6 right now. If not, make sure to pick up both of these each week and you should have all 6 within 3 weeks. It's kind of unfortunate that there's only 6 of these right now, but I'm sure they'll expand upon this system in future seasons like they have with Chargeable Light. Let's go and begin with what these things even are. So they're pretty much just elemental like attrition bubbles on the ground that you can pick up, and when you pick them up, no matter what you're doing, as long as you have one of the mods on, you'll get this benefit at the top. Picking up an elemental well grants energy to your ability with the lowest current energy. Picking up an elemental well whose element matches your subclass damage type grants energy to all of your abilities. So if we pick up a solar well on Voidwalker, we only get energy in our melee, which was technically the lowest one. Now if we go and pick up a solar well on a solar subclass, we're going to get that same chunk of energy, but now in all 3 of our abilities. So obviously having matching elements means a lot. And that effect will happen no matter what, it's built into the system. But how do you even create these elemental wells? There's going to be 3 mods that can create them. The first one being Elemental Ordnance. Defeating a combatant with a grenade spawns an elemental well that matches your subclass energy type. So we go in and put on Devour, that way we can spam some void grenades. Every single time we get a void grenade kill, we'll get a void elemental well to spawn in. It's going to be 1 per grenade use. So if you kill like 5 minions with 1 grenade, it will still only be 1 elemental well, which isn't that bad. And if you're using a grenade build, that's a pretty consistent way of spawning in these wells. Another way you can spawn in the wells is going to be with your super. If you use Elemental Light, when you get a kill with your super, it'll spawn an elemental well matching your subclass. So if we get a bunch of kills with Nova Bomb, as you'll see, it will only make 1 void elemental well, which is kind of not that great in my opinion. I mean, it pretty much the same thing as a grenade, so not quite worth it. Then the final one will be Elemental Armaments, and what this one does is weapon takedowns with a weapon type that matches your subclass element have an escalating chance to spawn an elemental well. So with this one you have to match your weapons to your subclass, and when you do that, every single time you get kills with that matching elemental type, there's a chance of spawning in an elemental well. And I haven't played with this one enough to see if it's truly random or if it follows a system like the Warmind Cells, where like every 7 red bar kills or every 5 major kills will spawn 1 in. So I'm not quite sure if it follows a pattern yet or if it's just truly random. But anyways, those are the 3 ways to create the elemental wells. Now there's gonna be 3 mods they can do to enhance what happens when you pick them up. The first one being Font of Might. Picking up an elemental well that matches your subclass energy type grants a temporary bonus to weapon damage of that same elemental type. So once again with this one, you want to match your weapons to your subclass, so once again solar and solar. And when you pick up a matching elemental well, you're going to get a damage buff for 6 seconds. Normally on Carl we hit 953 with his auto rifle. You get that damage boost for 6 seconds, and now goes to 1048, which is going to be a 10% buff, which doesn't sound like a lot. But this buff does not follow like class buff rules where they don't stack. This one will stack with pretty much anything, which is obviously really good. So this could be just a 10% increase to DPS for boss fights and things like that. But at the same time, it's going to be pretty hard to, you know, line that up for when a boss fight actually begins, because the buff only lasts for 6 seconds. And the elemental wells stay on the ground for 20 seconds, so it is possible, but definitely not that easy. So maybe in future seasons there'll be mods to make that more realistic on boss fights, but it's still going to be a 10% buff that you're going to have quite often when you're just playing in general. Then another mod we have is Font of Wisdom. Picking up an elemental well that matches your subclass energy type grants you a temporary significant increase in your intellect, improving the recharge rate of your super. So the way I tested this was with 100 intellect, and I would pretty much just swap off my super and swap back to it and wait 30 seconds and see how far the super bar moved. Then I did the same thing, but I picked up a well at the same time with this mod on to get that improved ability regeneration for 30 seconds to increase our intellect. And after 30 seconds, as you see, they were pretty much at the same spot. So what I think is going on here is this mod will increase your intellect all the way up to tier 10, but it will not pass tier 10 if you already have, like, you know, tier 8, tier 9, tier 10. So having tier 10 pretty much did nothing. So instead, trying it with tier 5 and picking up the elemental well to get the improved ability regeneration for 30 seconds. And after 30 seconds, it was actually higher than it was with tier 10, which is quite surprising, but I think that was just because I picked up the elemental well a little bit later. So it seems like this mod just maxes out your intellect, which is pretty good, because that is the most costly mod for your armor. And the final elemental well mod will be elemental charge, which will allow you to become charge of light when you pick up an elemental well. If it matches your subclass, you'll get 2 stacks of charge of light instead. So if we pick up a solar elemental well on a solar subclass, we get ×2 charge of light. And the cool thing about this is it will stack with stacks on stacks, then also supercharge, and it allows us to get ×4 instantly when we just pick up a matching elemental well. So that's gonna be pretty cool for some charge of light builds. So I definitely have a few cool ideas to do with that. Anyways, those are the 6 elemental well mods that we have right now. And this system is kind of a mix between charge of light and Warmind Cells. And I say that because with charge of light, there were 2 different types of mods. One that allows you to become charge of light, then one that did something with the stacks of charge of light. And that is kind of how these elemental well ones are. Half of them allow you to create them, then the other half do something when you pick them up. But at the same time, with charge of light, you needed one of each to make a full loop. While with this system, as long as you have one that creates the elemental wells, every single time you pick one up, you'll get those chunks of ability energy no matter what. So you don't need a full loop to use the system. One mod will be enough, and that kind of makes it like Warmind Cells. As long as you have a Warmind Cell mod on, you can create the cells and shoot them and explode them. But then you also have mods that enhance what happens when you do that, just like the elemental wells. So showing off a build I made for this video, this is going to be a solar build. So we're going to be on bottom tree Dawn Blade, which is going to be really good for ad clear, then also boss damage. And our weapons of choice will be the Heritage, which is the raid shotgun. I know a lot of people also use the raid sniper this season for anti-barrier rounds, so either or works pretty well. Then we have the Tiku's Divination with the Callus, and finally the Code de Willow. And you pretty much want Frenzy or Lasting Impression on the rocket launcher. And this one is also solar, so it matches with our solar theme. Then look at the mods. The first one we're going to be using is the Elemental Armaments. That way we can get Elemental Wells to spawn in with our solar weapons. And then with those wells, we're going to be doing 2 things. The first one is Font of Might, which will give us that 10% buff to weapon damage every single time we pick up one of the Elemental Wells. Then the other thing will be the Font of Wisdom, which will give us that 30 seconds of max intellect whenever we pick up an Elemental Well. And if those 2 buffs sound familiar, well, we also have the new exotic chest piece on Warlock, which does pretty much the same thing. The first one is takedowns with a weapon that matches your subclass will grant you super energy. And the second part is if your super is already full, whenever you get final blows with matching weapons, you will then get a damage buff to those weapons instead. Then rounding out the build, we have Wrath of Rasputin, because both of our solar weapons are splash damage, so we'll be able to create Warmind Cells with that. Then finally we have Global Reach to enhance the radius of explosions and also the damage. So quickly going over the exotic chest piece on Warlock, because I haven't done it on my channel yet. First, looking at the damage part of the exotic once you already have your super. Every single time you get a kill, you'll get 5 seconds of absorption cells, which will be a damage buff to matching elemental weapons. And as you see testing it on Carl, this will be a 20% buff. And this 20% buff will actually stack with the 10% buff whenever we pick up elemental wells. So this will be buffing our solar weapon damage by quite a bit with this build whenever we have our super. But the thing about the 20% buff from the exotic armor piece is it does not stack with class-based buffs, for example, Empowering Rift, Well, or even Weapons of Light, which isn't too surprising because you can pretty much get this buff at all times. And given that most buffs in the game don't stack, so this buff is kind of like the 20% buff on Stasis, where it's gonna be good for clearing out ads, but when it comes to boss DPS, it's not gonna be an increase over something like Weapons of Light. Then the second part of this build is the super regen part with the exotic armor piece and also picking up the elemental wells. You'll be getting your super in no time. It's actually really quick. So with this build, you get your super very quickly. Then if you want to keep your super, you can keep getting kills with your bow and your rocket launcher with your super and overlap those 2 damage buffs, which works really well with the Tiku's Divination. Because when you have that 20% buff rolling, then also that 10% buff whenever you pick up a well, you can easily just hip fire red bar enemies and kill them, and pretty much just explode things left and right, which will then also create Warmind Cells because of Wrath of Rasputin. So the accuracy on this build is obviously extremely cracked. And another option is once you do get your super, once you're done with the Acclear, you can go ahead and swap over to Dawn Chorus, which will make the super do way more damage. So that is another cool trick you can do with this build. And you just have all kinds of options. You can keep your super for Acclear and get that buff going, or you can change to Dawn Chorus and melt bosses. So overall, that is my first elemental well build. and it's just kind of an evolution of my existing Tiku's Divination build, but now with the new exotic chest piece, then also 2 very similar elemental well buffs on top of that. Anyways, I'm a huge fan of these elemental wells. I think as the seasons progress, we'll be getting more and more of these mods, or another system that kind of intertwines with it, kind of like we had with Charge of Light and War Myself mods in the 3 seasons last year. And now that I've made a video showing off how all these mods work, I'll definitely be including them in a lot of builds going forward. I'm already working on a really cool Voidwalker build, then a Stasis build hopefully, and also a Charge of Light build with this. So definitely look forward to those videos in the future. The rest of the video will just be some strike gameplay. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.